My final call as a police dispatcher has scarred me. A strange tale about an officer who has the worst call of his life, and something which just puts the effect of what a 911 dispatcher feels. I'm Arshan from Gurukul Online Learning, and let's get into the strange tale in our Horror Stories from the Internet series regarding a police officer in Seattle who experiences the worst call of his life and the last call of his career. I'd worked as a police dispatcher for 9 years in my life. It's a career that takes a level of mental fortitude I don't think many possess. I used to hate saying stuff like that, always thought it sounded so pretentious. But the truth is, it takes a special type of person to be willingly listen to some things we have to hear every single day. Don't get me wrong, the job wasn't always grim. It had its decent moments. I've got enough decently funny drunk 911 calls to last me several lifetimes, though the reality of the job was often far darker. I understood that though, and felt I was more than equipped to deal with anything the job could throw at me. I was right for a while, for years. I answered every call, always able to keep my head steady despite being faced with some horrific situations. My confidence and ability to handle the job unwavered, until the final call I ever took as a police dispatcher. I glanced at the time displayed at the corner of my computer screen. 11:43. I laid backwards in my chair with my arms extended and held a massive yawn. I'd been at my desk since 3 in the afternoon, answering calls and dispatching officers as they were needed, which wasn't very often in this town. I live in a little port town in Washington, about an hour or so from Seattle. And though we weren't without our fair share of crime, our phones never rang off the hook, which meant a lot of free time for me. I was okay with that. As soul-wrenching as many calls could be, moments of respite were always more than welcome. A notification on my screen caught my attention. In an instant, I returned to my seat, headset on. 911, what's your emergency? I spoke to my headset as automatically as any line repeated hundreds or thousands of times can be spoken. For a moment, the line was only dead silent before I heard a reply. I need a policeman. I think someone is in my house. A child whispered from the other line. I felt the smallest of knots beginning to form in my stomach. I shifted in my seat. Do you know your address? I asked, adopting a firm but lighter tone in response to the caller's age. I heard a shuffling and heavy breathing from the other end, followed by a faint, "Wait." The caller returned and whispered their address. She was a little girl by the sounds of her voice, and she sounded scared. "Good job. What about your phone number?" The process repeated, and I quickly relayed her information to dispatched officers. Her address was on the edge of town, a little out of the way. I understood that it may take a while before help arrived. I stifled a sigh, not wanting to vocalize my worry as I received an estimated arrival time. "Is there an adult with you in the house?" I continued. "No," the little girl replied breathlessly, and I could hear the anxiety rising in her voice as she spoke. "My mom works late, and my sister, There was a pause, followed by an audible sniffle. "She's camping with her friends, and..." Somewhere on the end of the line, there was a crash, then a scream. My heart dropped. Are you still there? Are you all right?" There was a repetitive thumping sound, followed by the slam of a door. "I'm here," the little girl spoke breathlessly into the phone. "Are you all right?" I repeated the question. Yes, she was all right. But she said it barely above a whisper. Her tone worried me. She sounded more than afraid. Said, "No." Disturbed was the proper word for it. She began to cry, not as quiet as you would expect given her situation, but a deep, helpless sob that made my heart sink. When she spoke, it dropped altogether. "Please, please, please, help me." Her sobs turned into a hysteric cry, and I could hear loud, repetitive thumps from her end. Footsteps, and they were clearly not hers. They were heavy, far too heavy for a little girl. Without warning, a shrill cry, like the sound of microphone feedback, ran through my headsets. A sudden assault on my ears caused me to jump, and my heart to set off, racing like a jackrabbit. I fought the instinct to throw the headset off and instead clenched my eyes. The frantic and frenzied nature of her begging increased, and the strangeness began to settle in the air I couldn't quite place. A quick glance around the room confirmed most of the desks around me were empty, and I was on the call alone. The thought made me feel very isolated, and a growing uneasiness continued to take hold of me that I couldn't place. Something about the call just felt wrong. "Police are on the way," I began. I tried to infuse the statement with my usual level of assertiveness and confidence, but I worried that my easiness may be audible in my voice. "Can you tell me your name?" I asked. "Amber." "All right, Amber. Are you or can you get somewhere safe? A room with a door can you lock?" "I'm in my room," she said. It was obvious that she had been crying profusely. I locked the door." "Good. I'm going to stay with you on the line. Is there anywhere for you to hide?" Sounds of footsteps grew in the background as her voice lowered to a whisper. I think under the bed," she whimpered. "Okay, is there—" I paused, thinking over my words before continuing. "Anything you can use to protect yourself?" There was a silence on her end for a moment, followed by a hushed "yes." As she dropped the phone, I assumed to get a weapon. The clamor from within the house had grown closer to the phone, and the piercing ring had returned. I was almost certain there had to be something wrong with my headset or with Amber's phone. The sound grew to an almost unbearable extent, matched only by the deafening thuds from somewhere in the phone. It sounded too close. I could feel the hairs begin to rise on the back of my neck, and the ominous sense of panic began to give way to an unexplained fear. The urge to look over my shoulder grew harder to fight as the persistent thudding of the sound grew louder, nearer. It all sounded too clear, I guess. There was no static, none of the white noise typical of a phone call. Nothing. Just the sound of footsteps approaching closer, closer. I gave in to my instinct, whipping around in my seat, nearly losing my headset. No one. I had no time to settle my nerves as Amber returned to the line. Are you there?" she whispered, yanking me from my fog and back into the moment. Yes, I replied, struggling to take off my fears. Something was very wrong with this situation, despite my worries. I shifted back to Amber. There isn't any weapon," the girl murmured, "but I have something." There was a pause. Okay, what do you have?" I asked, realizing my prompt was necessary. A rabbit. A pink rabbit," she said. Even over the phone, I could hear a little embarrassment. "My dad gave her to me when I was little," she sniffled. "He said it would keep me safe." I didn't know what to say for a moment, but I didn't want to miss a beat. "He was right," I said, as encouragingly as I could. "Everyone knows pink bunnies are a great protection. You can go under—" I was interrupted. "Amber, I miss you." I could hear a man call from within the house. So the intruder knew her. I furrowed my brow. "Amber, do you recognize that voice?" I asked, hoping she would identify the intruder. There was silence for a moment before her response. It sounds like my dad." "Why does it sound like my dad?" I blinked. "What do you mean?" "That's my daddy's voice. Why does it have my daddy's voice?" "What's the problem, Amber? My dad is gone." I didn't know how to respond to that. Hell, I didn't know what to think about that. Had his voice? Before I could ask what she meant, we were interrupted by a sound. The thing we heard has taken me years to try to understand. I've come to believe it was that thing's laugh. At the time, though we couldn't know, it was the sound of metal crunching in a car accident as it met flesh, a wet, grinding shriek that shook me to my core. I wanted to vomit, and my vision began to blur. I can only imagine what it was like for Amber hearing all that in person. "Amber?" I panted, my senses returning to me all at once. She barely had time to respond before we heard it. A voice or voices calling her from somewhere nearby. They spoke as one, all with the same inhumane nature, dripping with malintent. "Amber!" My blood froze. Amber began to cry. Her cries eventually becoming pleas as she begged for help, her life, her mother, and my intervention. For 5 more minutes, just 5 more minutes, I muttered, mentally cursing the timer which displayed an estimated arrival time of dispatched officers. I prayed it would be soon enough. "It's outside the room," she whispered. Her voice was one of utter panic before breaking into a quiet sob. I silently swore under my breath. Amber, I need you to hide right now, if possible. The police are 3 minutes away. Stay as quiet as possible. There was no response. But I assumed from the shuffling sounds I could hear that she had gone back under the bed. For a few moments there was silence. Then Amber spoke and my heart dropped. I'm going to die, Enter. You're not going to die, Amber. I began to worry, now audible in my voice. I promise. It's reaching under the door. Oh my God, she muttered. There was a crash, louder than before, and Amber began to shriek. The noise continued, and it began to dawn on me what was hearing. It was the breaking of the bedroom door. Amber's screams had devolved into horrified babbling and pleas for her life. Whatever's on the other side of the door, her screams were soon drowned out by the same noise, that sick fucking laughter. What are you? Amber shrieked, loud enough to make my ears ring. Please, what are you? What are you? It mocked, in a voice that was some sick parody of Amber's. Panic gripped me as I glanced back at the corner of the monitor displaying the dispatch units. Arrival time, 1:36 a.m. Please, God, let it be soon. Amber, are you there? I called. Amber? As suddenly as it started, everything went silent. Somewhere in the distance, I heard sirens. I hear them, Amber. Officers are a minute away. Silence. My heart began to sink. Amber, are you there? I could hear some shifting, breathing. I think it's gone, Amber said. A surge of relief rolled through me, and a sigh leaned back as the chair displayed. 0:27. The dispatch time read. The sirens in the background grew louder. You did very well, Amber. The police are almost there. You did well. I couldn't think of what else to say. I'd never had a call like this, and something about it felt so strange. Something Amber said before rang in my mind. What are you? Amber, I began. What did you see? I was met with silence. Amber? Amber began to laugh. Amber, I said, my voice pleading, a wave of realization crashing on me. The laughter grew more raucous and less human. With every second, somewhere in the background, there was a knocking sound. They'd finally arrived. But too late. The only thing I asked at the moment, why? A laughter stopped abruptly as the thing on the phone spoke. It was fun. There was a click, and the line went dead. The house was empty when the officers arrived. No signs of entry anywhere, except the door to Amber's bedroom. The bottom, which had been torn away by something, leaving a wide space to crawl underneath. And Amber, or what was left of her, decorated the room. Whatever had been there had left nothing behind to identify, only carnage. The case was never officially closed, and everyone had their theories to what could have happened, ranging from serial killers to a bear attack, and everything in between. The caller was never made public, not my decision, but not one I necessarily complain about either. I never want to hear that recording again. I put in my 2 weeks' notice the same night, though I never returned to work after that day. It's been a year. I'd been trying to forget that call. As callous as it may seem, I was trying to content to forget about Amber, to forget whatever I had spoken to on that phone. But I don't think it's done with me. Last night I dreamt, or thought I was dreaming, about sounds of footsteps running through my bedroom door, across my house, as something screeched and laughed and mocked me just outside the bedroom door. I stayed in my bed long in the morning, and the sounds of having stopped, paralyzed by a mixture of fear and confusion, until eventually I convinced myself to leave the bed. I crossed the room, cursing every creak the floor made under my weight. I lowered myself to the ground, holding my breath as I peered under my bedroom door. There was something there, but it wasn't moving. I mustered up the little bravery I had left and rose to my feet, my eyes shut tight and a prayer on my lips. I pulled my door slightly, then stuck my head out just to see what was outside. I stifled a gasp. Then tears flooded my eyes as I bent over to pick up the pink bunny, covered in dark stains, from somewhere within the darkness just beyond the bedroom door. Amber's laugh echoed. And that was a surprisingly bone-chilling story. My last call as a police dispatcher has scarred me. Police dispatchers hear many things in their life. But a call like this is something that can make anyone have their hair stand up. And to you watching, I personally hope your dispatcher never has to hear anything like that, or you never have to be an Amber. Either way, good luck out there to all of you.